Hello students. Students, we are on the ninth chapter of your syllabus, that is control and coordination. And in the previous session, we had started with the new part of this chapter, where we started studying about the structure of the brain. So in the previous session, we studied that brain, which is also known as encephalon, and the study of brain is known as encephalogy. Now the weight of brain is about 1200 to 1400 grams in a normal human being, okay, in a normal healthy human being, and it is located in the cranial cavity. Okay, now the whole brain, the complete brain, it is made up of, you can say, 100 billion of neurons. So neurons, which are the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. So these neurons are about 100 billion in the complete brain. Now we further studied about the parts the brain is divided into. The first one is prosencephalon, that is the forebrain. Then we studied that there is a midbrain, which is known as mesencephalon, and the hindbrain, which is rhombencephalon. Now out of these three parts, in the previous session we have studied about the prosencephalon, that is the forebrain, in detail, where we studied the three parts of the forebrain. The first one is olfactory lobes. Now these are small structures which are completely covered by the cerebrum. So cerebrum being the second part of the forebrain, it comprises of about 85% of the forebrain, and that is the largest part. Now the olfactory lobes, if you see it from the ventral view, that is, if this is the brain and if this is the dorsal view, this becomes the ventral view, the lower portion becomes the ventral view. So only if you view it from the ventral view, you will be able to see the olfactory lobes. So the olfactory lobes are anterior swollen structures which are known as olfactory lobes, or it is also known as olfactory bulb. And it gives rise to this narrow part which is the olfactory tract. And each of this olfactory tract, you see that it goes to this temporal lobe. Okay. Now it goes to the temporal lobe in a part of the cerebrum. So temporal lobe is also a part of a cerebrum. The function of this olfactory lobe in the brain is detection of smell. So whatever you smell, to detect what that smell is done by the olfactory lobe. Next we studied about cerebrum, that is the largest part of the forebrain, and if you view it dorsally, that is the top view, you will see that the cerebrum is divided into two parts, and each of this part is known as cerebral hemisphere. Okay, so from the dorsal view, if you can see in this picture, the two hemisphere, it is divided by this depression, a long deep depression, which is known as cerebral fissure or the longitudinal fissure. Okay, now from the lateral view, this is the lateral view, you will see that there is a transverse myelinated axon structure which is known as corpus callosum. And this corpus callosum is nothing but it is a connection between the two cerebral hemisphere. So that is how we can say that the two cerebral hemisphere, these are not completely divided. It is divided by a long deep fissure in between, but inside if you see, it is connected by corpus callosum, which we can view it from the lateral side. Then we studied that the cerebrum, it is not a smooth structure. The surface of it is not very smooth. It is having various ridges and furrows. The ridges in scientific terms are known as gyri and the furrows are known as sulci. So why are these ridges and furrows necessary? They are necessary to increase the surface area of the cerebrum. And why is there a need to increase the surface area? The surface area has to increase because more and more neurons can accommodate there. So for the accommodation of more number of neurons, the surface area has to be increased. And because for the surface area to be increased, the cerebrum is not very smooth, it is having ridges and furrows. Now the outer part of the cerebrum is called the cerebral cortex, which is made up of grey matter, and the inner part, that is the medulla, is made up of white matter. So previously when we were studying about the exterior, the layers of the central nervous system, we studied that in the brain the outer part is gray matter and the inner part is white matter. So that is how we can say that in cerebrum as well, the outer part is gray, that is the cerebral cortex, and the medulla region, that is the inner part, is white. Now some of these sulci, that is the furrows, they are so deep that they divide the cerebral hemisphere into 4 lobes. So in the previous session we studied about the 4 lobes, and we studied them from all sides. That is, we studied from the lateral view, the dorsal and the ventral view. So we studied that there is this frontal lobe, then there is the parietal lobe, the lower back is the occipital lobe, and then the temporal lobe. And each of these lobes, they are having certain centers which are responsible for performing certain functions. Then we studied about diencephalon, that is the last part of the forebrain, where we studied that this diencephalon, again it is completely covered under the cerebral hemisphere, and further it is divided into 3 parts. The epithalamus, that is the roof of the diencephalon, the thalamus, that is just below the epithalamus, and the hypothalamus, which gives rise to the pituitary gland. So we have studied about all these 3 structures. Now in this part, we'll be starting with mesencephalon, that is the midbrain. Okay, the second structure of the brain, that is the midbrain. Now previously when we had seen the basics of the structures, we had seen that mesencephalon, it is divided into 2 parts. So the 2 parts of mesencephalon or the midbrain is the optic lobe and the cerebral peduncle. Okay, so the 2 parts of the midbrain is completely covered by the forebrain. This is the first thing, because again cerebrum being the covering the maximum of the area, that is 85% of the area, it covers the complete midbrain. So midbrain, you can say it is a small part of the brain, or it is a small structure of the brain. So the 2 parts of mesencephalon or the midbrain are optic lobes and cerebral peduncle. Now we will study about both of these structures in detail. The first one is the optic lobe. Now there is a pair of optic lobes. So if you see in this picture over here, this is one lobe and this is one lobe, and further each of the lobe is divided into 2 more lobes. Okay, so that is how it becomes 4 lobe. So 2 of the superior lobes over here, and below, if you see just below the depression, there are 2 inferior lobes. Okay, so a pair of optic lobe, each lobe divided by a transverse fissure. This is a transverse fissure. It is a very minute fissure or a very minute depression over here. Now this gives rise to 2 more lobes. Now these 4 lobes are known as optic quadrigemina. Okay, so the optic quadrigemina, it comprises of the superior colliculi. These are the 2 superior colliculi, and at the lower side these are the 2 inferior colliculi. And in total the 4 lobes, they make up to optic quadrigemina. Now again, this is a characteristic feature of mammals. So we have studied about 2 characteristic features of mammal. When we were studying about the forebrain, we have studied that corpus callosum is one characteristic feature of mammals, and optic quadrigemina is the second characteristic feature of the mammal. So that is how a brain can be detected of what organism it belongs to. If it is of mammals, if it is of reptiles or amphibians, or whichever organism. If there are these 2 structures, it is easily detected that the brain is of the mammals. Now what is the function of the optic lobe? As the name says, optic, the function is it helps in vision. So the detection of the vision, whatever you see, the detection of that image is done by this optic lobe. So this is the first part of the midbrain. The second part is the cerebral peduncle, which is also known as crura cerebri, and they are long longitudinal ascending and descending nerve fibers. So if you see, there are some nerve fibers which are descending and some of the nerve fibers which are ascending in this picture. So these are long longitudinal ascending and descending nerve fibers from the RAS. Now what is RAS? RAS is an abbreviation for reticular or reticulate activating system. reticular activating system is nothing but it is a network of neurons which is located in the brain stem. The brain stem is over here. Now brain stem is not just one structure, but it is a mixture of all the structures. It is the mixture of, you can say, the hind brain, a part of forebrain, a part of midbrain and all. So this RAS, that is reticular activating system, which is a network of neurons, it is located in this brain stem. So brain stem is a part of diencephalon. Then it is also a part of midbrain, the pons veruli and the medulla. Now it connects this RAS, it connects the cerebrum of the midbrain. Okay, and the you can say the function of this RAS is coordination between the forebrain and the hindbrain. So this is the function of the RAS, that is reticular activating system. Now near the center of the midbrain, a grey matter is scattered with white matter, which is known as red nucleus. So if you see over here, again, this you can see it from the ventral view only because it is covered by the cerebrum. So there is this grey matter which is scattered with white matter, and the name of this is the red nucleus. Now what is the function of this red nucleus? It is performing the function, it is responsible for controlling the postures, okay, and the muscle tone. So you can say basically it is controlling all the voluntary actions, okay. Then it also modifies some motor activities and motor coordination. So this is the function of the red nucleus. So the function of the cerebral peduncle is to coordinate between the forebrain and the hindbrain, and the function of the red nucleus is to control the postures, to control the muscle tone, and to modify some of the motor activities and motor coordination. Next, other than this, we also need to discuss one more system which is known as limbic system. This limbic system, it is associated with emotions, the behavior, and converting your short-term memory into a long-term memory. Okay, so suppose like if you are, you can take an example of if you are watching this video right now. So this is your short-term memory, okay, and if you want to remember this thing for a longer time, so that means it is converted into a long-term memory which is done by the limbic system. So the limbic system, it is associated with emotions, the behavior, and converting your short-term memory into a long-term memory. So they are paired structures again, and they are made up of two regions. The first region is amygdala. Amygdala is a small circular almond-shaped structure, and this is beneath each of the thalamus. So this is the thalamus region, and beneath each of this thalamus there is this small circular structure which is a part of the limbic system. So other than this amygdala, there arises this inner thick structure that goes towards the corpus callosum. So this is the corpus callosum. So if you see over here, this is a structure, a thick inner structure which is known as hippocampus. So these are the two structures or the two regions of the limbic system. The first one is amygdala and the second one is hippocampus. The function of amygdala is it is responsible for emotions. Now when we say emotions, it is responsible for emotions like anger, fear, and then it is also responsible for sexual behaviors. And when we speak about hippocampus, it converts your short-term memory into a long-term memory. So whenever any of your short-term memory is converted into a long-term memory, that means any memory that you remember for most of your lifetime, that is done by the hippocampus. Now there was this experiment that was conducted on animals where the amygdala region of the limbic system was removed. Okay, and after removing, it was noticed that the organisms, they lose their emotion of anger and fear. So even if a wild animal, okay, even if there is a wild animal and if this amygdala part of that wild animal is being removed, that animal can be tamed easily. Okay, because all their aggressiveness, their anger and their fear, that is removed. So this is about the limbic system. The second, the last part of the brain, that is rhombencephalon. We'll cover up this part also in this session. Now, rhombencephalon or the hindbrain. In the previous part, we have studied that again rhombencephalon. It is made up of three parts: cerebellum, pons varuli, and the medulla oblongata. So we'll be studying each of these three structures in a little detail. Cerebellum, it is a solid structure. That means it is not hollow and it is not having any kind of cavity. It is a solid structure. And it is the second largest part, having three lobes. So after cerebrum, cerebellum is the second largest part. So the cerebellum is the second largest part, having three lobes. Out of these three lobes, the two lobes are known as cerebral hemisphere. So these are the cerebral hemisphere. And there is one small lobe which is known as vermis. So this is vermis. So that is how cerebellum is divided into three regions or the three lobes. Cerebrum has outer grey matter and the inner white matter in branch like tree that is known as arbor vitae. So if you see over here, this is the cerebrum, and if you take a section, of the cerebrum, if you see it very minutely, you will see this branch like structure over here. Okay, it is like a branch of the tree. So this branch like structure is known as arbor vitae. This says that in cerebellum, the grey matter is on the outer side. So the dark region that you see is the grey matter which is on the outer side, and inside this branch structure you can see the white matter. So that is how we can say the white matter is on the inner side. So this is one characteristic feature of the cerebellum. Now the function of the cerebellum is controlling the voluntary actions. So the voluntary action is controlled, and then it also maintains the equilibrium by controlling this voluntary actions of the muscle. So the complete equilibrium of your body is maintained by the cerebellum. After this, the next structure is pons varuli or the pons varoli. So pons varoli, it is an oval shaped structure that you can see over here, and the function of it is coordination between the forebrain and the cerebellum. So the coordination between the two is done by pons varuli. Now it also helps in controlling the voluntary action like facial expression. So changing your facial expression is a voluntary action which is done by pons varuli. Then the last one is medulla oblongata, which is over here, and it is a triangular structure. So it is triangular in shape and it is having a hollow cavity. Again, it is not a solid structure, it is having a hollow cavity, which is, you can say, that is the fourth ventricle. So the medulla oblongata, it makes up to the fourth ventricle of the brain, that is metacele, and it is connected with the third ventricle by iter. So in the previous part, in the previous session, basically we had studied about the connections between the first and the second ventricle and the fourth and the third ventricle. Then the roof of the medulla oblongata is again non-nervous. Okay, so it is non-nervous and makes the posterior colloid plexus. So the posterior of the colloid plexus is made up by the medulla oblongata. If you see, if we discuss about the function of it, the first one is that it actually controls many of the involuntary functions. So out of the many involuntary functions, the first one is it has a center for controlling the heartbeats. Okay, because it is having a cardiac center, so it actually controls the heartbeats. It is having a center to control the heartbeats. Then the second one is it has a center for controlling breathing. So it is having a respiratory center which controls the breathing. And then other involuntary functions like peristalsis, that is the peristaltic movement, then sneezing, vomiting, urination and defecation. It is all controlled by the medulla oblongata. So basically, medulla oblongata, it performs the function of controlling the involuntary actions or the involuntary functions of your body. Now the pons varoli and the medulla oblongata have gray matter on the inner side and white matter on the outer side, which is a exception that we had studied in brain. When we were studying about the gray and the white matter, we had studied that in brain the gray matter is on the outer side and the white matter is on the inner side, that is in normal condition. But pons varoli and the medulla oblongata is a exception where the gray matter is on the inner side and the white matter is on the outer side. So students, we end this session over here. In this session we have completed studying all the three parts of the brain, that is the prosencephalon, forebrain, mesencephalon, that is the midbrain, and rhombencephalon, that is the hindbrain. In the next session, we'll be taking up the next part of the central nervous system, that is the spinal cord, and we'll be studying spinal cord in detail.